All right, so this is a little video over Succession, season 4, episode 4. So all of this season's episode titles seem related to Connor in some way, except maybe the first episode's title. The first episode's title is The Munsters, which could refer to Connor as well as his siblings, but it seems to just refer to Shiv, Kendall, and Roman. So this that seems to imply that Connor will be more featured this season, will be more important this season. I thought it might could be building up to something with his presidential campaign, like maybe he'll be someone's vice president, or he'll somehow grow. His numbers will grow in the polls, or something. I also thought it could have something to do with Connor finally joining the family company as maybe like a talking head or something. I think that's pretty far fetched, and I don't think that's actually going to happen. But it's certainly possible. And I mean, these titles could also be a misdirect. So yeah, the opening part with Kendall sitting around his apartment in the first few seconds of the episode. In my opinion, he hasn't looked that depressed since when he told his siblings about his role in the waiter dying at Shiv's wedding. He told them near the end of season 3, and that's about the last time he looked that despondent. Um, so yeah, Shiv's first scene, her talking to the doctor, it shows that she's pregnant. Um, that may seem obvious to a lot of people. It kind of went over my head the first time I watched the episode. But yeah, so she's obviously pregnant. Marcia seems like she's pretty obviously angling for influence over the company, and she probably wants a stronger place in the will, and probably wants to be included more in the company uh, stuff, in the company board and stuff. It's obvious that she's angling for influence. And it also seems implied by Willa that Marcia was a prostitute at some point. It's also possible that's how she met Logan. I don't know how Willa would know that though. It's not like Logan would confide in Willa or even Connor or any of his kids. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Although I could see Marcia, this being the only episode she's in this season, I could see her kind of disappearing after this. But I could also see her being included more. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. So yeah, this episode 4, Greg is behaving pretty weird. He's constantly awkward. He's not nearly as funny as he used to be. He seems kind of off his game. Like there's something going on with him, something bothering him. He's not as. I mean, I guess because of his uncle dying, he might not be his usual gregarious self, but he's just not. He seemed off to me in this episode. So there are a few pop culture references around Marcia. Shiv says "Death Becomes Her," which is a movie from the '90s. She also says "See How They Run." Marcia does, which is a Beatles lyric. Willa and Connor calling a bunch of boring Midwest states honeymoon states is pretty obviously sarcasm, at least on the part of Willa. It remains unclear like where they're going in those states and what they're going to be doing. You'd think that they'd have some extravagant honeymoon or something, but who knows? The kids seem to turn on each other super quickly once that document naming Kendall CEO is revealed. Their connection, their little alliance always seemed rather nebulous and like it wasn't gonna last. But they do get pretty quick. They pretty quickly get to stabbing each other in the back. Tom just keeps getting rejected over and over in this episode. It's pretty constantly he's being rejected. I didn't really expect Roman to help Carrie, kind of be her little savior. That seems somewhat out of character for Roman, although this season especially, he seems a little bit more caring and down to earth, and like he's in touch with his emotions a little bit more. Him being nice to his dad, him being nice to Carrie. He does seem to have found a little bit more empathy this season. Willa and her mom move super quickly in terms of taking over the apartment, the townhouse. They don't seem to be bothered by the fact that they're in the middle of a funeral, talking about taking over the dead guy's house. There's some obvious misogyny in Roman and Kendall being chosen over Shiv. This misogyny does come up with the siblings themselves and the siblings' convo in their last convo late in the episode. You can tell that Shiv is feeling left out and like they're kind of ganging up on her and stuff. But there's some obvious misogyny there. Shiv is as competent, if not more competent, than at least Roman and doesn't have all of Kendall's instability issues, and is not as easy to blackmail as Kendall. The whole Shiv falling over thing, it's pretty worrisome. People online are speculating about it leading to a miscarriage, but I think that's kind of too dark for this show. I don't think that's where the show is gonna be going, especially considering that the actress is pregnant in real life. But Shiv seems really fucking angry, really legitimately angry, and rightfully so. There at the end, I'd be pretty pissed too if my two dumbass loser brothers were named CEO, co-CEO, and I was just kind of left out to dry. The offer to make Logan look bad at the very end is interesting. Logan really was a shitty person. It's mentioned that he was physically and verbally abusive to Connor's mom. It's implied in earlier episodes and earlier seasons that he was physically and verbally abusive to Roman and verbally abusive to all the kids. It's interesting that Roman seems like the biggest victim of Logan's abuse in the show. So it's interesting that Roman is so against throwing his dad under the bus. It could be an example of how Roman is still trying to please his father, is still holding his father in an elevated position. But this does make Roman seem weak, in my opinion. It's the opposite of what his dad would do. His dad would certainly Logan would certainly throw his own dad under the bus in order to gain political capital and societal capital. And then the final scene of the episode, Kendall smiling after he blackmails Hugo, is pretty chilling. He seems a little bit too calm and collected. It was a fun ending to the episode, though. Very chilling. So now I'm going to get into some predictions. So at this point, it seems like the Gojo deal is still going to go through. There's nothing really. There was stuff in episode 2 and 3 about the deal being killed, but it seems like that's kind of been left behind. But I kind of doubt the deal will actually go through, considering there's been so much upheaval. It seems like next episode they're going to go to Sweden to visit Matsson, which we'll see how that turns out. I could see Matsson kind of trying to turn the siblings against each other and playing everyone off each other. So it doesn't seem like the kids will still buy Pierce, in my opinion. I mean, that deal is mentioned at least once in episode 4, but I kind of doubt that will happen. I mean, it can't happen if the Gojo deal doesn't go through. But I mean, the show ending with the kids in charge of a different media empire just seems like not where the show is going to go. So there's no way that Kendall and Roman are actually going to share the CEO role. It is framed as being an interim position. But I could see Kendall. Kendall seems to be in a bigger position of power. And Kendall is definitely going to try to undermine Roman, whereas Roman seems to be more empathetic and not have as much of a killer instinct as he has in other seasons. So Roman seems a little bit weaker than usual. Roman is definitely going to figure out that Kendall is behind the leak of negative stuff about Logan, and that's definitely going to cause a rift. That's definitely a subplot that's going to get more play. Kendall just generally seems like he has more backing among the board and the old people than Roman does. They seem to kind of like Kendall more. Kendall has more direct experience with leading the company and with being in a position of leadership for Royco. All of that being said, Matsson does seem to like Roman better than the other two siblings, especially in season 3. So that in and of itself could give Roman more power. If Matsson takes over the company, maybe he'll appoint Roman as sole CEO. I don't really think that's going to happen, but I think they're going to play with who Matsson likes and who he doesn't like. I could see them dropping the whole Hugo's daughter insider trading subplot. I mean, it's already been used as blackmail, and I don't think it's really going to go anywhere. It may kind of screw Hugo over, but Hugo's just not a major enough character for them to really explore that insider trading stuff too much. It's going to be interesting to see if Shiv's kid is actually Tom's or if it's someone else's. She doesn't seem very warm to Tom this episode. Like I said, Tom just keeps on getting shit on this episode. Nobody seems to like Tom anymore. I do think that the subplot of her being pregnant and whose kid it is and all of that will get more play as the season goes on. And then finally, Kendall's part in the waiter's death, which I already mentioned, it almost has to come up again. Him trusting his siblings, I think, will come back to bite him. I think that it's even possible that Shiv or Roman will hold a press conference and reveal Kendall's role in the waiter's death, like when Kendall outed his dad as being complicit in the cruise line sexual harassment stuff in that press release and that press conference. So that's it. If you want to like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.